Shall we?
Good day everyone! We are Group 4 and for today's video, we will be having tips and designing according to our learning materials.
Before we proceed to our guidelines, here is a small introduction about the learning materials and 6 tips about having proper learning materials.
Learning materials give information that is needed within a course. It also provides information, experience, and learning that the student may apply to their respective courses. Having a proper instructions for your learning materials is very important. The instructions will guide the teacher and also the student in handling or in using the learning materials. Number 1. Standard alignment. Learning materials must align to the 21st century standard. I am not saying that those learning materials issued before 21st century is not good, okay? No, no, no. What I mean is using standard aligned instructional materials ensure the teachers to have a clear criteria and guidance for instructions and assessment that will meet the needs of all students. Number 2, rigorous instructions. It is not enough that all instructional materials will meet the high quality standard. It also needs to include thoughtful and evidence-based implementation models. No to fake news. Kidding aside, let's go to number 3. Number 3. Based on research. Instructional materials should be research-based, externally reviewed, and have demonstrated efficacy for students across a range of abilities. Number 4. Take into consideration individual needs and learning styles. Choose materials that present information in a variety of ways. Make information more interesting and address learners' different learning styles. Number 5. Make sure the materials support learning objectives. Provide a wide range of materials that will enrich and support the curriculum and objectives of the course. And last, number 6. Make the material clear and accessible. Make sure the learners have sufficient background knowledge to comprehend the learning materials.
English language teaching materials should be attractive. We all know that English language teaching materials and course books frequently include reference to the look and the feel of the product. Well, some aspects of this criteria that are particularly pertinent to materials designers are the Number 1. Physical appearance. This is our initial impressions where it is important in the language classroom or in our English language materials. Number 2. User-friendliness. Materials should also be attractive in terms of their usability. Number 3. Durability. It is the needs to be given on how the material can be enough and have a robustness. And lastly, number 4. Ability to reproduce. This is the DIY or do-it-yourself materials designs and eye-catching multicolored original material. And for the next guidelines, here it is.
Language teaching materials should provide situations where learners need to interact with each other regularly in a manner that reflects the type of interactions they will engage in outside of the classroom. Hal outlines 3 conditions he believes are necessary to stimulate real communication. These are, number 1, to have something we want to communicate. Number 2, someone to communicate with. And most importantly, number 3, some interest in the outcome of the communication. Noonan 1988 refers to this as the learning by doing philosophy. For example, preschoolers typically have about 10-minute attention spans. Children are sure to lose patience when being required to sit still and listen to their teacher talk for an extended time. It's unrealistic to expect preschool-age children to sit and quietly fill out English worksheets. In learning by doing environment, your preschooler will be encouraged to ask questions and explore while developing creativity and curiosity. This empowers children to take initiative and make decisions and be problem solvers. By allowing young minds to participate in hands-on lessons, we open their eyes on how their world works. When exploring teaching options for learners, it is essential to look for a program that incorporates learning by doing, as this will ensure that they will get the most out of their education. Teaching materials which they can be able to play, ask questions, explore, and express their creativity would be very advisable with this guideline.
Teaching learning materials must be flexible. One of the most important qualities of a teacher must possess in teaching the learners is flexibility. When a teacher gives the assessment after the discussion to the learners and the feedback of the learners are negative, the teacher needs to come up with changing the plans to accommodate the needs of the learners. The lesson plans are the guide in the classroom, but there are some circumstances that class cannot always follow as smoothly as it is planned. There will always be interruptions due to the differences of students' learning abilities and misunderstanding when learning. When these obstacles happen, a teacher must be able to overcome it smoothly, and this could require changing the entire plan for the day on the spot. Maybe a particular diagram or visual was given in a class in order to help a certain topic. It's very possible that there are particular students that are not visual learners and would rather see the information displayed in a different way. This is where teacher needs to be flexible in their lessons by being able to come up with some other form to display the information that is easier to understood for the students who did not grasp the concept with the first visual. This requires organizing materials into several components such as graphs, tables, pictures, text, and other materials that can be used in teaching.
A tip when creating instructional material is to consider the form and function of the material. When creating them, a teacher needs to consider the preferences of his or her students when it comes to learning. There are those who prefer jotting down notes while listening, some prefer watching videos, and others prefer voicing out their inner thoughts during the session. By considering these things, the materials can be incomprehensibly flexible and adapted by the students, which will impact their productivity in the lesson. This also supports instructional materials to be appropriate to the learners, as it provides a positive atmosphere to the learners as well as to the teacher. Another factor is that the teaching material should have a role to fill within the classroom. It can be to encourage students to be productive or prepared. It can minimize the spreading of negative vibes. It can enlighten the students about the topic, or it can make the student ask vital questions. By providing it with a purpose, the students can enter a motivated phase to when they can make their own opinions about a specific tackled matter.
In order for the things we do to be successful, we need to have a clear and orderly purpose. Similar to building instructional materials, before you start writing down goals, stop and think what kind of change you want your training to make. In other words, what do you want your participants to do differently when they return to work? The first thing an educator should know is who his or her target audience is. It is important that your goal identifies the people who will conduct the study. The next thing the educator should consider is the behavior of the learner. As instructors, we need to identify what their different behaviors are within our classroom. This will make it easier for us to identify what their learning styles are. And the last thing to do is to give what you want your audience to learn. In this way, an instructor can teach what needs to be learned. By these things, it will be easier for us to think of the correct content of the instructional materials we will make. Therefore, such materials must be carefully planned, selected, organized, refined, and used in a course for the maximum effect. The planning and selection of instructional materials should consider both the breadth and depth of content so that student learning is optimized.
Attention, participation. That's what learners need. English language teaching materials should encourage learners to develop learning skills and strategies. Everything has a process, a step by step. Not all students learn in a short period of time. As a future educator, we must know the teaching materials, what they need to learn, and what kind of learners you have. The lesson cannot be inappropriate for your learners. For instance, you will teach elementary, but your materials are for high school. It is not accurate. Attention! It is important in teaching. Before you start the lesson, we should get the attention of the learners. Participation. Actively involve students in the subject matter, encourage them to develop concepts, and requires them to back up their views with evidence. Students who participate in class on a regular basis are more engaged with the topic and are more likely retain more information. Active involvement in class enhance critical and higher order thinking abilities. There are strategies we can use for faster child learning. We can use icebreakers, presentation, audiovisual aids, and much more.
Language learning materials should be contextualized. Teachers have the best capacity to help the learners to attain their fluency and mastery in language learning competencies. Through forming a well-fit language learning materials, teachers make their students' competencies relevant and meaningful. We should provide activities that are tailored to the level of their understanding so it would make sense to them. It also helps us teachers to enhance the students' abilities in a way that they would gain new information while enjoying it. Teachers should know the students' needs to fulfill it and develop their knowledge. If the learning materials did not meet the needs of the students, it may either be too hard or too easy for them to understand, and that results in them to not enjoy the learning process and be unmotivated to acquire knowledge. Without motivation, no learning will happen. Learning materials also help teachers in improving the way of teaching and learning process. This makes the learning easy to understand and easy to teach for the benefit of the teachers.
And that is it for our group. Thank you so much for listening and have a nice day. I'm okay.